somehow I wanted that part two. So here is part two of the three differences between living in the States and living in Trinidad. So the first one is the healthcare system, right? And this take gonna be like a little bit controversial, but the healthcare in Trinidad is free, but the healthcare in the States is basically not free. And what makes it like different, right? Like it's in a weird predicament where like the healthcare in America is super advanced and great quality, but back in Trinidad, since it's free, you have a hard time of like getting treated like in time. So for example, right, I remember I had a medical emergency in America. It took me from like 8 o'clock, and then in the morning I was like, not even in the morning stuff, like around 2 o'clock in the morning, I was able to go home. And I remember like when I was younger, right, I ended up breaking my hand. And I traveled to the hospital in Point Fortin, and that take about 4 hours. Next thing you know, they said, oh, they can't treat me because it's full. So I traveled all the way to San Fernando, and by the time I was done, it was already around 5 o'clock in the evening. I remember that like to the back of my head. So I was there from like 4 in the morning to like late in the evening. And just because America health system like is really good, doesn't mean it doesn't have its problems, right? So for example, if you had to do something simple like a little checkup or dental eye care, that could cost you a lot of money. And even the health insurance, like it's not really perfect, because if you're like making like below the wage, you can get healthcare free. But if you even make like a little bit over that, you could end up being forced to pay the premium because they won't cover you anymore. And even that have problems too, because literally last month, right, I was paying like for a premium insurance now. So next thing you know, now the price of the insurance doubled and I could no longer afford it. So I had to downgrade my insurance, which is like really unfortunate, because like America have a really good healthcare system. Another major difference between Trinidad and the US is how they handle the homeless situation. So this is going to be another controversial take, right? But in America, there are so many programs and different avenues you can take if you become homeless, to the point where you could literally, and I know people who do this, right? I personally know people, right, who either intentionally made themselves disabled or made themselves homeless just so they could get benefits from the government, which is a wild thing to do, right? And I'm still shocked to this day. You get stuff like food stamps, unemployment checks, and it even have homeless shelters where like people could literally go, even though like those stuffs are like not perfect, but like it have so many options there that like if I ever end up homeless, I know exactly what to do to bring myself back out. So if you're in Trinidad and you're homeless, you are actually homeless. There's almost no government program to actually help the homeless get back on their feet. The only place that I know that exists is New Horizon Center, which is like a homeless shelter. But other than that, like it even came to the point where recently the government was like trying to disencourage people to like subsidy the homeless, and they even like halted building this other community center for the homeless as well, which is like a shame, unfortunately. But yeah, that is the difference. Like in America, you actually have support if you're homeless. In Trinidad, it's almost zero. Now, the third one is the currency, the value of the currency to be exact, right? So in America, it's like gotten worse over the years, but at the same time, it's still workable. Even though like I know like it's really hard right now, but compared to Trinidad, it's a completely different level of hard right now. So for example, right, I remember the days, I lived in Trinidad long enough to remember when a piece of candy was 5 cents. Now that same piece of candy is probably like about $1 or $2 or $1.50, around that price range now. Even for a Bobby itself, because I remember a Bobby used to be 25 cents. Now it's around $1 from the last time I remember it, right? And that is insanely terrible, because it shows how bad the government has been running the place over the years. It's to the point where, like, for example, right, let me give you an example on how different the currency is in Trinidad, right, to the US. So if I was to buy a Nintendo Switch, if I wanted to buy a Nintendo Switch as soon as possible, it only takes me 1 working week of working in the US to get that Switch. In Trinidad, if I wanted to get the same Switch, it would take me about 3 to 4 months. That alone will explain the state of the currency right now. So yeah, these are the three differences between living in the States and living in Trinidad.